Today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So if the denominator of both fractions are the same, then you can easily add the fractions together. However, if the denominators are different, like this, then you'll need to rewrite both of the fractions so that the denominator is the same for both, and then you can add or subtract them. Now, the reason the denominators need to be the same is because the fractions need to be of the same size or scale. So we know that if we have 1/2 right here, and if we have 1/3, we can clearly see that 1/2 is greater than 1/3 in terms of proportions. You wouldn't be able to add these two together if the denominators are different, in which they are, because how are you supposed to shade in 1/3? Would you just shade in the other piece? That doesn't make sense, because then you have one whole, and 1/2 plus 1/3 does not equal one whole. However, if you notice, we can split up each of these into sixths. And so now you have 1, 2, 3 pieces out of 6, and you have 2 pieces out of 6 on the second circle. And if you add them together, it checks out because the denominators are the same. You would get 5 out of 6. Because each of the pieces are of the same size, now you can take the first one and simply add 2 more pieces to it, like this, because they're the same size. And this would be your answer. And you see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6. Now let's try these problems. So here are the steps. Find the least common denominator, then rewrite the fractions, then you can add or subtract, and then simplify. It's a little complicated, but let's start with the first step. Least common denominator. If you notice this first problem here, what's the least common denominator of 8 and 4? Well, 4 happens to be a factor of 8. And so that means that 8 is the least common denominator. So we can simply take the first fraction and leave it as is. And the second fraction, we can multiply the top and the bottom by 2. This doesn't change the value of the fraction. We're allowed to do this. So the top will be 6. 3 times 2 is 6. And the bottom is now 8 as well. Now we can simply subtract the fractions by subtracting the numerators. And we have 7 minus 6. And that's 1. Keep the denominator the same. This is as simple as the fraction could get 1/8. So that's our answer. Now let's try this next one here. What's the least common denominator of 4 and 5? We can find a common denominator by simply multiplying the two, 4 and 5, and we would get 20. And 20 happens to be the least common denominator. So we want to make both of these fractions in terms of 20. How do we do that? Well, the first fraction here, in order to make 4 into 20, we have to multiply 4 by 5. So we have to multiply the top as well. So we get 5x over 20 now. And so now all we have to do is make the second fraction in terms of 20. And 5 times what equals 20? It's 4. So multiply both the top and the bottom. And we'll get 8x over 20. And so now, because the denominators are the same value, we can simply add the numerators. So 5x plus 8x would be 13x. And so this is equal to 13x over 20. And you can't simplify this any further as well. So that's your answer. Now let's try this last one here. We have to add and subtract not only fractions, but a whole number as well. Now remember that a whole number like 7 is the same as 7 over 1. So we can rewrite it in terms of this fraction. So now we have to make all 3 of the denominators the same. This is pretty easy because we know 3 is a multiple of 6. So all we have to do is multiply 7 over 3 by 2 on both the top and the bottom. And we'll get this fraction in terms of 6 as well. And for the 7 out of 1, and for the 7, we can also multiply the top and bottom out of 6. 42 over 6 plus 9 over 6. And 7 times 2 is going to be 14 over 6. So now all 3 are out of 6. And so we can just simply add or subtract the numerators. 42 plus 9, that is going to be 51. So 51 over 6 minus 14 over 6. This is going to be equal to 51 minus 14. That's 37 over 6. And this is in its simplest form, so we have our answer here.